Is England unique in that in having like the Grandmaster being a royal and typically like a life term? I mean, is that kind of unique?
I don't know, quite honestly.
Okay.
John might be able to answer that one. I don't know.
More John.
No, according to the rule, the Book of Constitutions, the Grand Master has to be the royal blood.
Right. Is that
he's elected every year as every other master is?
Oh, he's elected, but pretty much it's his as long as he wants it.
No, he's elected every year.
Right. But he's typically there for years and years and years and years.
So I assume what John is saying is that if another royal wanted it.
But that hasn't, other Grand Masters have stepped down.
Okay, so they do. All right.
And until the present Pro-Grand Master was appointed, the Pro-Grand Master had to be royal blood.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And on his appointment, they had to revise the Book of Constitutions.
Okay. Your audio's a little off. It sounds like you're in a box.
I've only logged on to actually apologise. I've not attended for a number of times, and I'll have to leave quite soon now. I've got to speak to Norway.
Okay, Norway. All right. Tell Norway we said hello.
I've been terribly busy.
Yes. Well, it's good to see you again. Yeah, it's been a month since we've had a Zoom meeting. It's been a lot going on. The
chair of every order in England has to be elected every year.
Okay. I'm just wondering if there's. Go ahead, Brian.
No, go on. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, I'm just wondering if there, because it seems kind of unique that you all typically have the same Grand Master for years and years and years because he's a royal and he's the senior Masonic royal, as far as I understand it, typically gets that position. I'm just one of those other countries that would do that.
Well, there's been past foreign royals. There's been foreign royals who have been given past grand rank.
Okay. Well, I mean, like in say Germany or Italy or whatever, if they're they aren't monarchies.
Possibly the ex-British colonies might have the Duke of Kent as Grand Master. So
right.
Big provinces of
he's only Grand Master of England, and its dominions overseas. So if they're under English Constitution, he's a Grand Master.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, like, say, in Spain, if the Grand Master of Spain is elected as Grand Master year after year after year after year, that's what I'm getting at. Is if other countries follow your model, if other Grand Lodges have. Actually, I think here the Prince Hall Grand Masters tend to serve multiple years, whereas in the mainstream lodges they don't. Brother Mike, good morning. Nice to have you with us.
Anyway, I've got a phone call.
Good morning.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, John. Good to have you with us. Where are you visiting us from, Mike?
West Virginia, Vienna, West Virginia.
Oh, very good. And you got a cigar. I'm jealous.
I do. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, it's all coming up on 10. I don't know how many more people we're going to get. But I did want, let me go ahead and do the formal thing since we have it on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. This is Virginia Research. Oh, wait. Brother Dakin in. Welcome, everybody. This is Virginia Research Lodge's semi-bi-weekly Zoom unstated meeting. My name is Chris Douglas. I am your genial host. I'm going to put in the chat for those who don't have it, which is probably not anyone, our typical links, which you don't get to see if you're on YouTube. You need to watch us live. First is our Facebook group for Virginia Research Lodge. Second is our website, and then our YouTube channel where we host these meetings afterwards, and then my email. If you want to sign up for our weekly emails, you can reach me on Facebook or email me directly. So I did want to apologize for the last Zoom we attempted to have back in July. I was on vacation. We had just gotten settled in the room. I was trying to get my laptop to work. I haven't tested my new laptop enough with the Zoom, and I think I may have to hook up a separate camera to make it work right. Because it has a built-in camera, but there were some audio issues, and I didn't want to try and hash it out with everybody sitting there. The biggest thing was I was worried that I was going to record the whole meeting and everybody would be fine, and then I get done. It turns out that my audio isn't recorded. So rather than put everybody through that, I went ahead and canceled the meeting after it started instead of canceling it and not giving anyone notice. I just waited about 10 minutes and let everybody know. But there are other things going on. Our speaker was none too happy, but I told him, it's like, look, it is what it is. It's an imperfect world, and sometimes we have to cancel things. But he was in a bit of a huff afterwards. But we may or may not bring him back as speaker another time. I mean, really, it was like, things happen. We got to roll with the punches. This is not a professional operation. I do not have anyone else to hand this off to. This is pretty much a one-man operation right now. So I'm trying to get other members of my research lodge on board and trained up, and so other people can host this. So it's not just relying on me. But for the moment, it is. So when things happen, things happen. That's just how it is. So I did want to say sorry. And we have not had one since we had our stated meeting for Virginia Research Lodge on the 13th. We had our district deputy grandmaster was the speaker, and he gave a very, 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 very long talk on Lake Champlain and Benedict Arnold and some other interesting history and geography and other things he talked about. But it was a very good meeting. We had a decent number, even though a lot of people couldn't make it because we had to move the meeting. I got more people coming in, of course. Morning, Kurt. Nice to have you with us, brother.
Morning, Chris.
How are you? If you missed it, I was apologizing for canceling our last one at short notice. I think some of y'all were on here, and I was like, okay, good to have you here. I got to go. Bye. Morning, Alan.
Morning, Chris.
All right. So, so it's been over a month since we actually had a full-on meeting. We had our stated on the 13th, so I didn't want to have a Zoom meeting that week. I was going to have it the 20th. I went and moved it to this week, 27th, because next week is Labor Day. So for us here in the States, I figured it wouldn't be, I wouldn't get as much attendance on a holiday weekend typically. And so we will have Joe Martinez on the 10th, and I'll talk about that at the end. So we're kind of trying to get back on track and have one every 2 weeks for the rest of the year is my plan. So, Brother Aday, good to have you with us. Good to say hi when you signed in.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here.
All right. So I have a question for the group. I'm going to go and put this out there, and I'd like everybody to answer. I'll be the guest speaker, so I know I'm already here, so I don't have to worry about the guest speaker getting here. But I like having a question beforehand and just kind of get everybody. I like to get everybody involved a little bit, so we're not all just passive viewers. And I like to get some feedback. It's fun to get input from different people. So here's today's question. And if things are different, I will, let me just ask the question. So since masonry was originally operative and we became more speculative, we do not literally build physical structures anymore. But the requirement has been that a man must be hale and whole. You must be physically intact and mentally intact. We do not want to bring in someone who is old and enfeebled and all. So the current rule is in Virginia, and I imagine most other Grand Lodges, and that's what I'm going to ask, is it a requirement in your Grand Lodge that a man be fully intact, hale, and whole? So if you petition a lodge and you're missing a finger or a hand or something, or you can't stand or sit, what have you, in Virginia, you have to get the Grand Master to give a waiver, and most of the time they do not. So you must be physically intact to be a Mason. Is your opinion that we should continue that trend, or maybe because we're now in a speculative light, is it really necessary that a man meet the physical requirements to be a Mason? So I'll start with Brian.
Thank you. Absolutely no problem at all. As you know, I'm in the UK. There we have a lodge full of blind people.
Oh,
We have wheelchair users in our lodges who are quite happy to sort of go around on their wheelchairs, no problem at all. We're entirely inclusive. We
okay.
even have rules for people that want to change their gender. So yeah, that's not an issue. It's a
Okay.
dead issue as far as we're
And
concerned.
it's already been changed then. It's already,
Yeah.
that is your call. Okay. And
Yeah.
I do want to clarify, and this is part for the discussion here, is if you're a Mason, you've already been raised, and something happens to you and you're now in a wheelchair, you lose an arm, what have you, you're still a Mason and we don't exclude you. This rule only applies to a new member joining, which is maybe why we should consider changing it. All right, Brother Mike, what say you?
I assume I'm the only brother Mike here.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry. I don't know. This actually came up in our local lodge discussion recently. And to your point, if somebody gets injured later on after being raised, they can continue on maybe with the assistance of another brother. But of course, in West Virginia, I think they modeled their Masonry or Freemasonry after Virginia in the beginning. So we have that same rule about being whole, I guess, having all your limbs. And I thought, at least in our local discussion, it was related to being able to do the signs, do the ritual, do the floor work. So there would be some limitations if somebody wasn't able to do that. So I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer to say it needs to be changed, something that definitely could be looked at.
Very good, thank you. All right, Kurt, Brother Kurt.
In Wisconsin, we do not have the rule of have to be whole, because I know one brother is missing part of a finger, and he's actually one of our most accomplished Masons, does a lot of the degree work, has the whole book probably memorized. And so we would have really lost a lot if he was not included. But we also have somebody with an artificial leg. And my understanding is it never had to go to the Grand Master for, to be able to get an exemption or anything like that. My personal opinion is we should be open to that. I would still say somebody should be mentally proficient to, be in the fraternity, because I think that's, especially the Masons, in my mind, that's probably one of the most important parts is really understanding the rituals and understanding what we believe in.
Very good, thank you. Brother Allen, you're moving around, I want to make sure you got back.
Well, as you know, I'm a Virginia Mason also.
Mhm.
I did have a candidate that was a double amputee. He was approved. He failed by vote of the lodge, but he was approved by the Grand Master for exemption.
Oh my. Well, I guess it's we don't always know, but do you know why he was not approved by the lodge? I mean,
Yes,
because of his limitations.
it wasn't physical.
Oh, it was something else. Oh, okay. All right then. So what's your opinion on, should it be changed? Should Virginia retire that restriction, or?
I think it's fine the way it is, that there are exemptions allowed, but I think it was based on, will not hold converse with a eunuch, child, all that stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, but I mean, okay, eunuch, that's a specific limb that's missing there, but I mean, if you're an adult man and you're missing an arm, you're still in everything else in Masonry, you're qualified. I mean, you're not of young age, you're not of dotage, it's just you were missing a limb. But I think a part of it is they have to be initiated, and you have to assume your various forms at the altar. So you have to be able to kneel, you have to do all that, which makes sense. Now, we've raised candidates where we brought a chair and set it behind him, and the guy assumes the position for the obligation. And then as soon as it's done, it's like, okay, if you want, you can sit in the chair for the rest of it. We accommodate him so he doesn't have to remain exactly where he was. I'm intentionally being vague on thing, but you all know what I mean. Okay. Bill's also here in Virginia. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it necessarily needs to be changed because, as you stated, as in Kempsville, like in your lodge, we've had we've had candidates that couldn't stand because of either their age or their physical limitations because they've had a surgery or some kind of issue like that. So as like you stated, they sat in a chair because they couldn't kneel at the altar, etc., or they stood because they couldn't sit or stand. So couldn't kneel or sit.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think it needs to be changed, but I think as long as people recognize that a candidate has physical limitations and the worshipful master is willing to, and the lodge is willing to accept that candidate, knowing the physical limitations and those things are accounted for during the 3 degrees.
Okay. Okay. Brother Jonathan, what do you
Yes.
think?
Well,
Aren't you a Virginia Mason?
yes.
I forget.
Yes.
Okay. We got a lot of Virginia Masons. All right.
I think, the way you started the question was excellent because, we're talking about speculative versus operative.
Right.
In the past, operative, it would have made sense because you need all the limbs and everything to do the job.
Right.
In speculative, we're looking at a situation where both UK and United States, we just concluded a long war with Afghanistan. We're going to have a lot of people in our population, good people, who may be missing limbs or whatever. And I think it would be a disservice not only to them, but to us to kind of exclude them because of that. And people can provide value for the fraternity and the community. I would motion that we can make special accommodations and try to make it work for this person, especially if they're going to be someone who provides value to not just a lot of the fraternity.
Right. You got a lot of chatter behind. There's a lot of feedback behind you there, Jonathan. A lot of background noise. Okay.
If I may, Chris, in the UK, we have an ex-past master who suffered brain damage from being from a IED in Belfast.
Oh my!
And he needed help, but we got him through the chair, and he did every office in the lodge as well.
Oh my! Okay.
He had a tablet basically with him, which he read things off of, and he had a prompter.
Okay.
We got him through. Same with people in wheelchairs. We'll get them through. We'll push a wheelchair around for them. We'll kneel in their place if need be.
Right.
But ways and means.
Okay. Brother Aday?
Well, I belong to 2 grand jurisdictions, and that's Grand Lodge of England already has been spoken about. Now in Canada, I've never come across where that became a limitation, and people will see that as being discriminatory. I think there's even a ritual book which is made in Braille, but obviously it's not common to come by it. But if there's a request made, the Grand Lodge will provide one for a candidate who is blind. So there's no limitation whatsoever. And besides, you can't just see it on that physical level. This is more than just a physical level. You can't, because if you're just going to look at the ritual as just everything in physical, then you're probably missing the point of masonry. So you cannot, limit people, good people, just because, they have a limb missing or not. What if they had a limb missing in war, defending you, the country? Are you saying that they're not qualified to be a Mason because of that? That's just not right.
Well, I think everyone's of the same general opinion. It's either the rule is no longer applied or everyone's in favor of either changing the rule or making exceptions. I don't think anyone here has made an argument that no, you absolutely have to be intact to be a Mason. I defend the rule only because it is the current rule. I saw the value of it at one time that we inherited it. But I don't think I want to be opposed if we decided to remove it altogether. That's just me. But if we leave it like it is, we make exceptions when it comes up. But I think someone online, I remember I had this discussion, and someone brought the point of someone needs to be able to contribute. Someone has to be able to work. If you're a Mason, you have to be able to contribute. You have to be able to provide your own for your own needs, that of your family, as well as be able to donate to the lodge for whatever charity. Now, you don't have to be physically intact to work. There are many jobs you can do with all sorts of handicaps and limitations. So that's not a precluder in this day and age where not all work is physical. So certainly you can be someone who provides for your family and be blind and be missing a limb. So that's really not a disqualifier if somebody wants to make that argument. You know, you certainly can contribute to the lodge. If you're earning a living, you're earning a living, and that's it. So interesting. All right. Any other thoughts on this subject before we move on? Or I appreciate everyone's input. Nope. Okay. All right then. Okay. Well, that's good. I don't know. I think I appreciate everybody having some input on that. I think like I said, we're all kind of on the same page on it. But I guess if it becomes an issue in Virginia, for example, at some point, someone may push to change it. But generally, I think like most of us are saying, you can get an exemption from the Grand Lodge. So why fix what's not broke, I suppose, is kind of the way we're looking at it. All right. So today's guest speaker is yours truly. Hi, my name is Chris Douglas. I'm a past master of Charles T. Morton Lodge number 232 in Norfolk. I'm past master of Ocean View Lodge, my current lodge, number 335, also in Norfolk. I've been a member of Virginia Research Lodge since 1995, I think. And this is what's interesting is the paper I'm giving was delivered by Most Worshipful Ralph Hultquist. He was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Minnesota in 1987. I was raised in 1987 here in Virginia. He came and gave a talk to Virginia Research Lodge in 1995, and that's his paper I'll be presenting here today. Brother Heinemann, our recent secretary, now Secretary Emeritus, emailed me and said, I'm sorry I can't be there to hear Brother Hultquist. And I said, well, it'd be quite a trick to hear Brother Hultquist because he's been dead for a few years, but I'll be the one reading his paper. But it's interesting that he gave a paper the same year I started attending Virginia Research. I don't believe I was there when he gave it. I might have been, and I just don't recall. But I wanted to present a paper partly because we weren't sure when we were going to have this meeting. It was going to be the 20th or the 27th. And rather than line someone up and have to move it on them, I thought I'd go ahead and take it on myself to read it. Plus, we have a lot of research papers. This one has been sent out. It's been emailed. It was one of the first ones we sent, so many of you might not have read it, but I think a lot of these papers deserve to be brought back up and read. So I will present my own paper from time to time, but I think these older papers need to be presented. I had a chance to read another paper in South Norfolk Lodge here a month or so ago. So I think these research papers need to be brought out and read again. So that's why I've chosen it for today. And I think it's quite interesting. It's called Another Look at the Trestleboard. And like I said, it was first presented in Virginia Research Lodge in 1995. Now, let me see if I can do this. If I can share. That. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, and let me do. Let's see, mute. Okay. Around here, but okay, just make sure I'm still on the screen here. Okay, so everybody can see the PowerPoint and they can see me talking. Yes. Can y'all still see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we can see.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. And this is a PowerPoint. It's not tied directly to the paper. I just threw it together with some different Masonic images, so it's not precisely tied to the paper. But I wanted to present something so you look at something other than just me babbling on for a half hour. So another look at the Trestleboard, Most Worshipful Ralph Hultquist, past Grand Master of Minnesota. The legend of Hiram Abiff, the celebrated master architect of King Solomon's Temple. is so familiar to Masons that at times it almost becomes an historical fact. Secular history is silent on such a personage, and biblical history simply relates. The artificer whom the king of Tyre sent to King Solomon to assist in the completion and decoration of the temple, whose mother was the widow of a man of Naphtali, his father a Tyrian, and on completion of the temple he returned home. Hail and hearty, thank you very much. Masonic legend reiterates an entirely different story. We well remember hearing, why is there confusion in the temple? King Solomon demanding, why are the craft not at their labors? And the answer, Hiram Abiff is missing, and there are no designs on the Trestleboard. No designs upon the Trestleboard. Our ritual relates the legend of the master architect Hiram going into the temple at high 12, when the craft were called to refreshment, to offer up his adorations to deity and to draw his designs on the Trestleboard. The master architect Hiram was laying out the work for 153,000 workmen, 3,300 masters or overseers of the work, 80,000 fellow crafts in the mountains and in the quarries, and 70,000 entered apprentices or bearers of burden. Quite an undertaking in any time. But 3,000 years ago, before cellular phones, walkie-talkies, and computers, and we are told that universal peace and tranquility prevailed during that important period. Have you ever wondered about the timbers felled and prepared in the forest of Lebanon? The biblical account in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles tells us that 30,000 men were conscripted to work in the forest of Lebanon, rotating 10,000 per month. All this over a period of 7 years. More designs on the Trestleboard. What did the master architect write or scratch out on the Trestleboard to oversee such a stupendous undertaking as building the magnificent temple of King Solomon? We can only imagine. Did he draw new designs each day? Quite likely, as it was his custom to draw designs at high 12, lunchtime for the craft. While speculative masonry existed well before 1717, little is known of the first designs on the Masonic Trestleboard. Information is sketchy and provides little insight, particularly with the lapse of time. Some writers have found references to the Gothic constitutions, an assemblage of masons in York called by Prince Edwin in 926. The Peasants' Revolt in England in 1381 has been described as an uprising by upwards of 100,000 Englishmen, well organized, marching on London against the injustices of the crown and those in power. Were they Masons? Author and brother John Robinson thought so. What designs were on their Trestleboard? Next on our Masonic Trestleboard, we find the old charges. The first of these old charges is called the Regis poem, circa 1390. Only 9 years after the Peasants' Revolt. Brother Wallace MacLeod, a professor of classics at Victoria College in the University of Toronto, made the old charges the subject of the Prestonian lecture in 1986. They have been called title deeds of the craft earlier to that. 113 copies are known to be in existence today, but many others were destroyed, supposedly by Masons, to prevent their falling into the wrong hands. Brother MacLeod summarized the old charges thusly. They all begin with an invocation. The purposes and contents are stated, followed by a brief description of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. Next follows an extended history of geometry, masonry, and architecture, taking up half the text. The manner of taking the oath is explained. Next, an admonition against taking an oath falsely. Take good heed that you may keep these charges, for it is great peril for a man to forswear himself upon a book. Perhaps a reference to the great light in masonry. Zechariah 8:17, and love no false oath, for all these things that I hate, saith the Lord. Then the specific charges, 6 in number. No man shall take, number 1, no man shall take upon him no Lord's work, no other man's work, but that he know himself able and cunning to perform the same. Also that no master take no work, but that he shall take it reasonably. 2, ye shall be true liegemen to the king without treason or falsehood, and also that every mason keep true counsel of lodge and in chamber. 3, you shall not take your fellow's wife in villainy, nor desire ungodly his daughter nor his servant. Number 4, and also that no fellow slander another behind his back to make him lose his good name or his worldly goods. Number 5, and that no fellow go into the town in the nighttime. There is a lodge of fellows without a fellow with him that may bear him witness that he was in honest places. Number 6, and also that every mason shall receive and cherish strange fellows when they come over the country, and set them to work. And they have no stones for him, he shall refresh him with money to the next lodge. 6 very simple rules to live by, and lastly, an oath by the aspirant to keep these charges. While the old charges were most likely provided for use of operative masons, they found use later in speculative masonry when the constitutions of 1723 were written, and the old charges were included in the constitutions almost verbatim. The old charges provided direction for masons for hundreds of years. They also provided the necessary initiation ceremonies. They were, in essence, a way of life for masons, a very good and complete Trestleboard, and incidentally, in use in some jurisdictions even today. Brother McLeod has performed a yeoman's job of researching and writing this paper, and I would suggest it for further study on the old charges. A book entitled Living the Enlightenment by Margaret Jacob details many Masonic Lodge activities in merry old England, as well as the continent during the last part of the 17th century and the 18th century. The author states, the culture of Masonry possessed certain characteristics and was most frequently progressive and reformist. The lodge members, often royalty and the educated, being a part of the Age of Enlightenment, discussed current events, their daily lives and activities, and ways to improve their lot. Ironically, members often were on both sides of issues. Some members favored and backed the monarchy. Others favored more democratic types of government, and this was true of many issues. An excellent book to follow Masonic activities during the Age of Enlightenment and to see Masonry's impact at this time. June the 4th, 1717 is the day recognized as the beginnings of the Grand Lodge of England, the Mother Grand Lodge of the world. 4 lodges met at the Goose and Gridiron Ale House in London, formed the Grand Lodge, and elected Anthony Sayer, one of their members, as the first Grand Master. It was likely a very modest start, little fanfare, and even little recorded of this auspicious occasion. In Freemasonry, a celebration of the craft, we read, for the first 3 years of its existence, Grand Lodge simply provided an opportunity of an annual social gathering of the London lodges. Like I said, these are just random Masonic pictures. This is actually the House of the Temple of the Scottish Rite in DC. It has nothing to do with the Grand Lodge of England, just in case anyone's confused. Dr. James Anderson, a Presbyterian minister and lodge member, although it is not known when he became a Mason, was commissioned in 1721 by the newly formed Grand Lodge to write a constitution. This constitution included a history of the world, laws for the craft, the old charges, and lastly, general regulations for the Grand Lodge. It was adopted in 1723. Basically, it was the same. Designs on the Trestleboard that had served earlier generations, plus the general regulations for the craft that had been adopted in 1721. A complete and comprehensive Trestleboard to guide the craft as speculative masonry developed. Dr. Anderson has received much acclaim for this constitution. However, the general regulations had been written in 1720 by the then Grand Master George Payne and approved by the Grand Lodge in 1721. The old charges were simply handed down, as was a section on world history. Brother Lionel Vibert, a past master of Quatuor Coronati Lodge number 2076, authored a book, Anderson's Constitutions of 1723, published in 1924. The author not only published the Constitution in 1723, but added his own commentary and aspects on historical events that had led to these constitutions. Vibert commented, Dr. Anderson made one big change from the old charges when he removed definite religious requirements, i.e., a belief in the Trinity, the state religion, to a religion in all which all men agree, leaving their particular opinion to themselves. It was a far more serious matter that he was instrumental in removing from the literature of the craft all definite religious illusions. But as we now see, the craft, in fact, owes its universality today to its wide undenominationalism and the respect he built better than he knew. Before James Anderson wrote the Constitution in 1738, the Grand Lodges of Ireland, 1731, Massachusetts, 1733, Scotland, 1736, and South Carolina, 1737, had been established and ultimately each with its own constitution. Two of those, of course, were provincial. Massachusetts and South Carolina were still under the Grand Lodge of England. Since those early days of speculative masonry, not only has been there a proliferation of constitutions, amendments, and rituals, but various and numerous codes and enumerated landmarks have been developed. Consider this: is the Trestleboard getting cluttered? For over 100 years, masonry prospered. The two Grand Lodges in England united. Masonry spread through Europe and abroad without the myriads of codes, enumerated landmarks, and rituals. Just how many designs on our Trestleboards do we need to erect our temples? Other than a reference to carefully observe the landmarks in 1717 by the newly formed Grand Lodge of England, no attempt was made to enumerate them until 1817, 100 years later, when the Wigan Grand Lodge adopted a list of 15 landmarks. The Wigan Grand Lodge was short-lived, and the list passed into obscurity too. The Ahimon Razan states, the landmarks of Freemasonry are those marks of distinction by which we are enabled to prove our rights, R-I-G-H-T-S, and privileges, and also those ancient and universally established usages which haven't existed unchanged from time immemorial. John Simons defined landmarks as the form and essence of the society. Masonic scholars agree that the landmarks are old, permanent, universal, notable, and immutable. Dr. George Oliver, an influential Mason, writer, and publisher of Masonic books from 1823 to 1863, made a special study of the ancient landmarks, enumerating them several times, each time differently. Dr. Oliver's first list of landmarks included sacred items such as the creation, the fall, the vision of Jacob, the construction of the tabernacle, and the contest of Jephthah with the Ephraimites, and others. Dr. Oliver's last list of landmarks included items such as 1. Elementary, 2. Inductive, 3. Ritual, 4. Personal, 5. Cardinal points, 6. Scientific, 7. Historical, 8. Typical, 9. Doctrinal, 10. Practical, and 11. Obsolete. Quite different from what we think of as the landmarks of Masonry. According to Coyle's Masonic Encyclopedia, Dr. Oliver wound up in confusion, and surely we agree. Could the landmarks of Masonry be enumerated? Should the landmarks be enumerated? So much for attempts to list the landmarks in England, the birthplace of Masonry. There was little desire, little interest. So the landmarks remained landmarks, but not enumerated by Mason or body of Masons. The Grand Lodge of Missouri appointed a committee in 1850 to ascertain what the landmarks were. They referred to Anderson's constitutions of 1723 and adopted a resolution as such. The Grand Lodge of Minnesota made its next attempt to enumerate the ancient landmarks in 1856. This Grand Lodge, still in its infancy, a mere 3 years old, enumerated 26 landmarks, the only list with 26. Rob Morris of Kentucky published a list of 17 landmarks, also in 1856. Albert Mackey released his list of 25 ancient landmarks in 1858, and ignoring previous lists, unequivocally declared his list was the first. Albert Pike, a contemporary of Albert Mackey, allowed only 3 of Mackey's lists as actually being ancient and landmarks of the craft, and we read in Mackey's own writings, Mackey's Jurisprudence of Freemasonry, the foundations of Masonic law are to be found in the landmarks or the unwritten law. The Masonic Service Association published a booklet in 1932, Ancient Landmarks of Freemasonry. It was updated in 1978 and again in 1983. This booklet indicates that 17 United States jurisdictions use Mackey's list either by adoption or by custom. 13 United States jurisdictions developed their own list and range from Michigan with 3 ancient landmarks, Minnesota with 26, Nevada with 39, and Kentucky with 54. 4 jurisdictions use the old charters, and 16 jurisdictions, including Virginia, have not bothered to emulate any list. Jurisdictions outside of the United States have wisely chosen not to enumerate any list of landmarks. Right Worshipful Brother Benjamin Franklin expressed it so well: the government that governs least governs best. It is agreed among many Masonic scholars that most of the enumerated ancient landmarks are neither ancient nor landmarks. They had arrived at the age of permanence and clustered up the Trestleboards in the process. Certainly Mackey's 25th landmark, "These landmarks can never be changed," hardly qualifies as a landmark of Masonry. Section 39 of Anderson's Constitutions provides, "Every annual Grand Lodge has an inherent power and authority to make new regulations or to alter these for the real benefit of this ancient fraternity, provided always that the old landmarks be carefully preserved." No old landmarks were enumerated in the old charges. Perhaps their initiation ceremonies included references to the landmarks of Masonry, and no more was necessary. By the way, this is from Virginia Research Lodge. It's one of the stained glass windows that Babcock Lodge has. But the past is only prologue. Masonry throughout the years has developed into a giant for all that is good, all that is just, right, and true, and we owe a huge debt of gratitude to those who went before us. The charge before us now is to continue Masonry, a vibrant and viable organization, on into the future. Today, United States Masonry is struggling to find its place in society. Not only is it stifled by a morass of constitutions, codes, conventions, and landmarks, but the ritualists are holding firm to their belief that Masonry consists of memorizing degrees and lectures. Those interested in charity are pushing for huge endowments. Others have their own agendas, while some have a preoccupation with mere numbers, further degrees, and activities. The wide variances in constitutions, codes, conventions, customs, and landmarks between the various jurisdictions leads to confusion in the temple. Which is right and which is wrong? We have lost our way in this quagmire, partially due to an obsession, a love affair with permanence. Is it possible we have lost sight of the real purpose of Masonry too? From the CompuServe Masonic Forum, shows how old this paper is. If you want to go worship God, go to a church. If you want to do charitable works, go to work for a charity. Masonry does neither of these things as well as these organizations, and yet more. It helps you develop the ability to worship, to be charitable, to be better as a man and as a Mason. Does Freemasonry have a place in today's society? If we were to ask our brothers, what is Freemasonry? We would receive almost as many different answers as questions asked. The American College Dictionary on Freemasonry: a member of a widely distributed secret order, having for its object mutual assistance and the promotion of brotherly love among its members. Still misses the mark, and very definitely not a secret order. Johnston in Masonry defined: Masonry, according to the general acceptation of the term, is an art founded on the principles of geometry and directed to the service and convenience of mankind. To the serious student of Freemasonry, it becomes a way of life, pursuing the hidden treasures, living the lessons learned, enjoying the company of brother Masons, and helping the less fortunate. In the United States, our society is governed by a constitution guaranteeing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Even so, there are many individuals who would wish to impose their beliefs and opinions on others, even when in the very smallest minority, while other individuals have no regard at all for others' lives, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. Still others look for reasons to excuse those who have little regard for their fellow human beings. This often results in moral poverty and bankrupt society. Masonry teaches us tolerations of others' opinions and beliefs. While society does change, albeit slowly, generations do tend to have certain general characteristics. Yet there are those in any generation that subscribe to a better way, being the best you can be, working together for the common good, and family values. Freemasonry would seek out those who are Masons in their hearts. Those who would live by the teachings and tenets of Freemasonry would become members to carry on our traditions. The old churches taught the initiates to be responsible for their actions, to be kind and considerate of others. Certainly, the 6 specific charges are among the real, but not enumerated landmarks of Freemasonry. Let's repeat them again. Simple and paraphrased. A good work ethic. Be true to your country. Do not cover your brother's wife, daughter, or mother. Do not slander your brother. Keep good company and help the needy. Freemasonry meeting society's needs and desires. With all the codes, conventions, and constitutions in Freemasonry today, and the prohibitions, hindrances, and barriers that come with them, it is indeed difficult to sort out the good, the honorable, from the bad, the faulty. We must remember rules and regulations can outlive their original purpose. Constitutions, codes, bylaws, and even rules need to be reevaluated constantly. Amendments are often added, which only lead to further confusion, sometimes in conflict with other sections of the code. Imagine the confusion that would exist in the United States today if the originators of our country's Constitution had added a clause stating, "These principles are the rules of government and policy that must never be altered or disturbed." I have no quarrel with the provisions of the enumerated landmarks, but do not believe they should be accorded the status of landmark and may well be placed in other sections of codes. Generations of Masons lived quite well without enumerating the landmarks of Masonry. Why then did the succeeding generations feel the need to enumerate and worse, enact them into codes for all time? Nothing stifles initiative more than hearing, "But we've never done that before." More downers include, "Is it in the code?" or "What do the ancient landmarks say?" Those interested in getting things done differently and trying new ways and activities often find it's easier to get forgiveness than to getting permissions. As Freemasonry enters the 25th century, changes will abound. The computer and the various linkages throughout the world is already making changes and is sure to engender many more. The world that many jurisdictions involve themselves with from their inception is gone, and in its place are instant communications and exchanges of ideas with other jurisdictions, including those not recognized. Not many years ago, this would have been tantamount to unmasonic conduct. Now, Freemasonry is on the threshold of living up to its basic tenet, a universal brotherhood. Masonic education, or more especially the lack of it, has long been an Achilles heel and is now on the rebound. Many up-to-date Masonic books and videos are available, well written, interesting, certain to enlighten the craft and attract others to Masonry. Masonry in the past depends upon Masons to spread the word to tell others of its good effects. One of the saddest things I can think of is hearing a son at his father's wake repeating, "I didn't know my father was a Mason." It is indeed sad when fathers do not inform their own sons about Masonry, its benefits, and how to become a Mason. Many Masons do not tell their friends what Masonry is. My contention is that they do not know enough about Masonry to know what to say to others. They fear telling the secrets of Masonry. All lodges should have a program for the new members, those really excited about Masonry, what few secrets there are, and more especially, what can be told to their family, friends, and coworkers. All Masons should have a knowledge of Masonry so they can tell others of its good effects. However, many are bound by a fear that they will say the wrong thing. Codes and landmarks may be violated. Again, the Trestleboard has become so cluttered, it is strangling the very organization it was designed to serve. Freemasonry in the past included its membership, the leaders of society, the movers and shakers. I fear there is more shaking than moving now. Freemasonry in recent years has become countercultural and as such often ignored, discredited, questioned, and rejected. Freemasonry can once again be a force for good and help the individual in the pursuit of happiness, self-improvement, and a better life. Freemasonry can relate to those in society who are searching for a better way, a better life, but changes in procedures and activities are necessary. Certainly, the old charters deny restrictions such as regularity, clandestine recognition, etc. Let's go back a few hundred years, give up micromanaging, give up rules handed down to us by those wishing to impose their small and petty beliefs on future generations. Remember, change is taking place whether we realize it or not, whether we're involved or not. Why not get involved in making the right changes? I'm not going to repeat a long list of ills. Most, if not all of us, have been to boring meetings, poorly done ritual, witnessed little commitment, empty sidelines, and shrinking membership lists. We must promote and encourage our members to participate, get involved, use modern management techniques to apply the teachings of our genteel craft to today's society. New members also have fresh ideas. Let's listen to them. Let's hope those who are willing to try new ideas instead of saying, "But we've never done that." Let's clean off the cluttered Trestleboard and put on some designs mutually useful for the workmen in building their temples today. Final slide. I am a Mason. Any questions? Comments?
Where did that last slide come from?
That is from Monty Python. You do not recognize that?
Okay.
That is from the what was it? The architect sketch from Monty Python is about these guys were taking bids from architects to build a retirement home And one of the guys, John Cleese, wanted to be a Mason, and two of the guys were Masons, and it's very funny. It's worth looking up. But it transferred into trying to convert this guy from wanting to give up being a Mason. So they say, how can you spot a Mason in public? And this was one of the signs of how to spot a Mason. It's hilarious.
Is this paper that you just read, though, is that on your website?
Yes, it is. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. It was, let's see, bring this up. It was, let's see, it was presented in 1995. So it was in Spreading the Light. Let's bring it up. I'll just look them up real quick. Yeah, it was most all of our papers have been put in Spreading the Light. I'm trying to stay ahead of it. It was it was number 6. So it was the the 6th paper that I started sending out. It was presented on September 23rd, 1995. And let's see, Spreading the Light. I started that in 2016, or no, let's see. Number 6, it was January of 2019. So it was our first paper, 2019. So we had just started. I started in November 2018 publishing these. So it was one of the earliest ones. So most of you probably haven't seen it because most of you weren't on the paper list then. I don't remember how we were on the list originally. I think it was just members of my research lodge, the Scottish Rite, and my Masonic, my mother lodge. I just added them all to the mailing list. And it wasn't until maybe 6 months or more later that I started asking people to sign up and added people from the web. So I agree with this, brother. I mean, almost everything in that paper is something I would have said. I don't quite agree with the whole regularity, but that's a whole lengthier discussion. I mean, you have to have something for recognition just so regular lodges, grand lodges can recognize other grand lodges. But I think that can be, it's a good concept, but it has been misapplied. I'll say that. But almost everything else, he says, we definitely, it was, I would agree with him. I think this is one of the better papers on landmarks because it really addresses them and talks about how many have been written, how they vary so greatly from place to place. And, you know, it kind of, he makes an argument against it. Basically, it's like they can't be landmarks if they're not subject to change, I guess. And I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know how many Masons operate daily on landmarks. I don't even know how much they influence Masonic policy anymore because we rely on, like, Virginia has a methodical digest. Those are the rules. The landmarks aren't enumerated. They're found in there. I mean, if a landmark is the master, the worshipful master is the head of the lodge and is elected every year. Well, that's codified. So it's a landmark, but it's also in the code. So, Brian, you got any comments?
Nothing at all. Thank you.
Okay. All right then. Insightful as always. Yeah.
I really like the part where, you know, going down to like 6 landmarks and the real critical ones.
Mm-hmm. Those were the old charges that you read off there. Yep.
Okay. But at 62 years old and I've been a Mason 3 years, do I want to spend my time memorizing everything in the code book, all the stuff, or do I want to understand what it means?
Right.
I think both are important because you want to continue on the history of Masonry and everything, but I want to probably spend more time on the latter, understanding what it means.
Right. Yeah, a good point. And if you can apply the 6 old charges, that's much easier to carry around. I mean, it was, I'll bring him back up. Where'd you go? Let's see. A good work ethic, be true to your country, do not covet your brother's wife, daughter, or mother, do not slander your brother, keep good company, help the needy. So yeah, that's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Anyone can remember those. And pretty much if you memorize your obligations, that's all covered. Work ethic, I don't know. I guess you'd have to look and see where work ethic is covered, you know, in the obligations per se. But you know, you're right. If you memorize your obligations and your obligations tell you what you need to do to be a Mason, then you're covered. You don't need that. The landmarks themselves, it's like you read them, and I've seen various copies, and they're if you haven't seen them written down, it's like, you know, there must be a Grand Master. There must be 2 wardens on the lodge. You must be a warden to be master. It's stuff like that. There's nothing there that you say, no, that's wrong. It's just that I don't even know. It's sort of like they've been, I think in most cases, they've already been adopted in the code of each individual Grand Lodge. So it's not like, say in Virginia, I would say to your point about needing to memorize all of them, if you're going to be master of the lodge, you should be familiar with the Methodical Digest. At least have read through it. Virginia has a real nice correspondence course of 4 courses that you can take that basically prepare you to run your lodge. And it's the qualifications to be master. Like in Virginia, you have to have the past master's degree before you can be elected junior warden. You must serve as a warden, junior or senior, for 1 year prior to being elected master. You must have a warden certificate before you can be elected master. And that's being able to open and close and for all 3 degrees from the master's chair. So, you know, if you at least take the correspondence courses, that prepares you to be master of the lodge. You know the Methodical Digest well enough that if an issue arises, you can break out the book and you can look and say, here's what it says. And that's enough. It's like the Grand Lodge has to be more cognizant of them. I guess when the Grand Master, when he has to rule on something, he would go back and read the Methodical Digest, read the various decisions. But it's not something every Mason needs to carry around in his memory. You know, it's kind of like if you're not a lawyer, you don't need to memorize law books. You just need to know that, well, if I speed, I'm going to get a ticket. You know what I mean? You just follow the laws that are out there.
Well, I know, like in Wisconsin, when you're posting, you don't have to be able to recite the obligation verbatim. What you do have to do is at least explain what it all means, and you know the 4 parts of the obligation, and go through all the important points of the obligation.
Right.
And that's where I fell in more. You know, when I posted, I explained what it all meant. But now that I'm in the line and at some point could be the master of the lodge, now it's important for me to start memorizing the obligation and know verbatim. So everything about opening and closing lodge.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what's like here. So do you have a Master Mason's catechism that you have to complete with the master's obligations? Okay.
Yeah, there's a catechism for all 3 degrees, including the Master Mason.
And okay, so what happened? You've just been raised. How long do you have to learn your master's catechism, and what happens if you haven't memorized it yet?
I don't remember how long we have it, but I mean, I did it within a month, I think. You know,
okay. Can you, like, you can attend meetings even if you haven't stood it yet?
Yes, you could attend once you're a Master Mason. The previous degrees, no.
Okay, right. So, like, you know, it's like here in Virginia, there's 3 catechisms. You have to stand your EA to get the fellowcraft. You have to stand your fellowcraft to get the Master Masons. There's nothing really requiring you to do anything with the Master's Catechism. You go to lodge, pay your dues, you can vote, you can do everything without getting the 3rd catechism. And they give you a nice certificate. And we, of course, encourage the new member. I would say, well, Kurt, I just finished coaching you through the first 2. While your memory is fresh and you've already seen the similarities, now's the time to knock out the Master Masons, because the questions are almost the same. You just change 2nd degree to Master Mason's degree and the obligation. You're in the groove, so it's to your benefit to do it now while you're familiar with the ones you just did. And that's what I would tell my candidates. But there's nothing really requiring you to stand it. And unless now some lodges, to be an officer, they make you take it if you haven't yet. But I look at it this way: if you're going to get around to being an officer in the lodge, you have to learn all the degree work anyway. You might as well do the catechism, because you're going to recycle some of it when you're doing the degree part. So it's
right.
There's no incentive not to, but it's just interesting that you're not really required to. It's not like there's a serious penalty, like you can't you can't sit in lodge until you stand it or something. There's no real teeth behind it, where the other two, you don't advance unless you do them. So it's kind of weird the way that panned out. But
Yeah, it's true.
any other comments?
Hey, Chris, this is Bill. Can you
Hey.
send me that paper that you talked about?
Yeah, this one? Sure.
Yeah. Thank
you. In fact, well, I can do this. I can put it right now, actually, in the chat. I can have a link directly to it. That may be the quickest way. This is on the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, the spreading the light. I started that back in 2018, and it's been a lot of. It's taken a lot of consistent work. I think I don't know that I've actually missed a week since I started doing it. I managed to do it every week. Some weeks it's like Thursday before I get it out. I make it a point of sending it out on Monday. But a lot of it was me scanning in the papers that were in paper. We had digital copies and they were lost. People who were in charge of them passed away and we didn't get the stuff back from them, from their families. And I had hard copies of all the Trestleboards from 1980 to 2005. And I scanned all of those in. My hardest part is now going back to 1950 to 1980 and try and find them in the records somewhere in the Grand Lodge, because the minutes have been turned over to the Grand Lodge. So the Lodge has them from 2005 to present, and they've given me hard copies. We have them in our minutes. But they were under the impression they were sent with the minutes to the Grand Lodge. So when a person gives a talk, they usually hand a paper copy of the speech to the secretary. I always do. I always print out a copy, and when I go anywhere, I just give them that copy. But not everyone did, and we don't know what the previous secretaries did. They may have just stayed in the Lodge records, may have been thrown away, may have been misfiled. But we thought they were sent to the Grand Lodge for preserving, and thus far, I've looked through like the first 3 years of our minutes, and there's none there. So I'm hoping somewhere in there is those. So there's a good chance everything from 1950, 1979, I don't have the papers. So now that I've got all the transactions published and I've got all of the papers almost to present. I mean, I'm not going to publish a paper from last year. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll probably get to 5 years from now, 5 years back and stop and do some other lodge for a while, let them build up. I don't want to publish a paper that was just given, because I don't want we want people to come to lodge. And if they think they're going to get the paper, I would never publish a paper a month after it was presented in the lodge, because I want to encourage people to come. These are more about the older ones. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do when I catch up to the current year, with these. So it's kind of been a fluctuating plan. I mean, my goal is to get all of them scanned in if they exist, if we can lay hands on them. I'm also pushing the other 4 research lodges in our jurisdiction to share them. A. Douglas Smith has been. I've got almost all of theirs published. The other ones, they don't have them online. They may not have them together. So I may not get all of them. That's why I'm looking at the AMDs as well, because I want to keep this going. I want to find new material to come in so I can continue to publish one every week from other Virginia sources. I'm hoping to get them from the Virginia Research Chapter and also from the AMD councils, because they all have papers and all of it. There's at least 30 or 40 of them in the state. And if they maintain their papers, even if I get a few from each one of them, that'll keep us going for several years. So I want to keep doing this as long as I can, pulling from different sources. And if we ever completely run out, then I'll stop. But I don't know. I think I'll always find a source. So that's what's made it fun to do.
Yeah, it's really a phenomenal resource. I know one of the things I'm trying to get started with the area I'm in right now is a Masonic study group. I was part of a book club, but it was quite a ways away. So I'm trying to start something locally, and we're calling a Masonic study group, so we can look at not just books, but papers and things like that. And
oh, cool.
The papers you have online, that's a tremendous resource. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're more than welcome to them. I'll push this here. Here's a link in the chat. You can go straight to the spreading the light page, I basically have a list of all of them with links and who presented it and what all. In fact, let me just, I'm going to share that just so everybody can see it.
Yeah, I've been on it.
You see, yeah. So here is the spreading the light, and you can see I have them all on one page, starting with number 1, which was my paper, Masonry: A Well-Spent Life. I figured kick it off with the one I wrote, and then going through. But it's got the date presented here. You can look, so you can sort that. Like the oldest one is from 1980, and then going through to as recent as 2022. Well, the one I did for the Herald, obviously I put that there, and paper. A couple of these are papers I've given since then that I've figured, well, let me go ahead and cheat a bit and use a paper that I presented somewhere. As
Do you expect Ben Zine to come back with that finding?
I'll reach back out to him. He kind of got in a little. He kind of got in a bit of a huff because I had to stop the meeting, and he said, "Well, let me just go ahead and put a link." It's like, we'll set up something else, but he was very determined to have his paper, and I think he found somebody else to host it a week later. It's like I just at the point is like I really needed to end this. I had other stuff I was dealing with, and I really didn't want to try and tell everybody in the group, well, here, go over here and do this. It's like you put something together and announce it, go ahead. But I wish he would have taken it in stride. He didn't. He was a little miffed, so I'll probably reach out to him later on and maybe bring him back. But I don't know. It's like I was saying, it's like this is a one-man operation. It's not perfect. Things will happen. You can't where no one's getting paid to be here, and no one is paying to watch this. So I'm not too worried about the I'm trying to keep it professional as I can, but honestly, if it goes the way it goes, there's not a lot of pressure to be perfect. And I think it's kind of fun that we were kind of making up as we go along. It's made a lot. Yeah. But you're right about the papers being a great resource. That's why I really want the other research lodges to contribute, because I have a search engine, and I'm on the technical side, I'm looking into maybe changing to a different platform to host all of these. It'll give me better capabilities and clean up the look. The look's kind of old. I'm kind of looking at revamping it, and I'm thinking if I migrate to something else, I'll have a whole different look anyway. So prepare to see some changes coming up. But I have a search engine that's pretty good, but it's just there's so many hits that you put in certain words and you get like 50 hits. So I want to look at maybe doing like keywords or categories or something, and something where when you do a search, the more likely hits come to the top, kind of like what Google does, where if you're looking for a specific thing, find a way to float those to the top and make it easier for people to see. But I already have it where if you put in a person's name, you'll see that author, if you know the author, and then you click on that and it'll show you all of his papers. So it's pretty good, our search, but I want to do a better one. And it's just really neat that people will reach out to me and say, do you have a paper on this? And I'm like, okay, let me go look. But I kind of get to the point where people just go themselves and search. Mm-hmm. But I have enough awareness of it that if it'll strike my memory because I've read all of them. I don't remember all of them, but it's like somebody mentions like flasks. Yeah, I know there's a paper on Masonic flasks, and then we'll bring that one up. But it's just kind of in the back of my memory. I can't tell you exactly which one, but I could probably find it faster. But generally, I want people to go in there on their own and do searches and come up with stuff. So, but it's great. I feel good that we're able to make this resource available to people out there, and I'm just going to continue to grow and help people enjoy it. It's really cool when I meet someone in person, especially, and say, "Oh yeah, I read your papers, and I get together with my lodge, or I make it a point every week to sit down." One guy sit down with his wife every week, and they read the paper together and talk about it. And like that's really cool. So it's nice to know people are out there enjoying it.
So those papers, the way that they're recorded on your website there, that is something you can share with people who are not Masons. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Anything that's published, everyone, I vet our papers. Anything that's on our website is on Facebook, is in emails. Anyone can see it. It's here on on YouTube. So we only I only publish papers that do not have specific secrets in them. I haven't removed any for content. I mean, it's just whatever people have. Some of them were, I think there was one that was really boring and it was only like 2 pages long and they didn't actually say anything. So I excluded that because they didn't actually say anything. But I really do not, I'm not, censored in any way. It's everybody's their opinion. It's something to do with masonry. So we have it, but mainly it's just, there's only been like 3 or 4 that explicitly Masonic secrets. And one of them, it's because the guy was reciting the ritual from like 1750 or something. It was very interesting. And I'm reading, it's like, well, no, it's almost like, except for this phrase and this phrase, it's almost exactly what a ritual is today. So no. Another one talked at length about the password of a Master Mason and its language origins. And in Egypt, it's this word, and here it's this word, and it means this. Like, well, no, because you say the word over and over and over again. It's perfectly fine in a lodge. I'm surprised that some of these were actually in our transactions, that they got published and put in books. Because it's like, so even if we publish it once, I'm not going to publish it again. But that's the only criteria, is nothing that's a secret. So it's perfectly available for anyone who's not a Mason to read, and I'd encourage that. But that's a very simple rule. I mean, we're on Facebook, we're on a website, we're in a Zoom chat. I'm expecting most of us to be Masons on here, but we're not checking dues cards. It's on YouTube where anybody can look at it. So we kind of have to look at, and those of you don't even have dues cards. But I mean, like, I don't know how some people think they can vet, and this is an old discussion, but some people think they can vet online, and they have a group where you can only be a Mason. I know Brian does try with ESSA Zoom chat, or whatever their official name is these days, to verify a guy's a Mason. But even if he is, he may be recognized by the Grand Lodge of England, but not by Virginia. So I don't have any assumption I'm having Masonic discussions with someone online. We're talking about Masonry, but it's not any sort of formal Masonic discussion, because you may not be. I mean, it's not likely because you're here in the States, but Kurt, you can be in a Grand Lodge and my Grand Lodge doesn't recognize. Brother a day, it could be that his one Grand Lodge we don't recognize, but the Canadian one we do. But that's not, so that's not a bar we have to meet, that we all be regular Masons where every one of us can sit and lodge with each other, because this isn't a lodge meeting. You know what I mean? So there's a standard, but a much lower standard than if you show up in person. And trying to tile a Masonic body online is just, it's ridiculous. You can't do it. It's not secure. As a guy who's worked in the military space for many years, or John's back, I know what we would take to secure it. Yes, if Masons really, really, really cared, we could do something like CIPRNet, like the military uses, and create a classified network for Masons that's validated and it's totally secure. The technology exists. Whatever we're using right now for these online lodges, that's not meeting the standards. So no, if you ask me, if this online Masonic lodge that's out there, is that a tiled meeting? I would say no, because just about anybody could get in there if they wanted to. So it's not tiled. So, it's just one of those things. Yes. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to have to take the beagles out because they have to go potty. So
okay, no, that's fine. I was going to wrap it up. I hear my dog whining in the background. If that's your wondering, that's not my kid. That's my dog. But I need to let him out. Next, go ahead. We'll see you later, Bill. I'm just going to give the next week's event. Let me announce what's coming up. I say next week. It's actually September 10th. It will be Worshipful Joe Martinez, who was at MasoniCon in Kansas, I think, this week. He'll be speaking on the Osirian. It's Osiris. Is it Osirian? Is that right? The Osirian mythos and its connections to Freemasonry. So he'll be talking about Egyptian mythology and how it relates to Masonry, which is very interesting. That's our next speaker. We have a couple other ones in the works. People got bumped and had to be moved, so I don't have a calendar beyond that. So I guess I need to sit down and line up some more speakers for September, October. Yes, long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you, Mike. I know that reference. I understood that reference. Anybody else have anything to offer before we break? It's only 11. Surprisingly, I was not the longest talker we ever had. Go figure. But anybody anything you want to share before we break?
No, thanks very much. Though.
Very good. Appreciate y'all being here. I think we had 9 or 10 at the most. We're gonna try. I mean, I'm happy to present, even though we had less than 10 people. I mean, I hope you all enjoyed it. It will be on YouTube. I'm always trying to reach a wide an audience as possible. I don't know what to do to get more people to attend, but we'll work on that. But glad you all came out today. Hope you all enjoyed it. Y'all take care. Bye.
You too.